Sometimes the mind refuses to settle on a single answer. A decision that should take minutes stretches into hours as possibilities multiply and consequences are examined from every angle. This habit of overanalysis isn't simply a personality trait. It reflects how certain brain systems process uncertainty, risk, and control. When these systems become overactive, thinking shifts from useful problem-solving into a loop of endless evaluation. Today, we will talk about the neuroscience of overanalysis. So before we start, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. 1. What overanalysis really means in the brain. Overanalysis, often called overthinking, occurs when the brain repeatedly examines the same situation, problem, or decision far beyond what is necessary to reach a conclusion. While careful thinking is essential for solving complex problems, overanalysis turns useful reflection into a mental loop that consumes energy without producing clarity. From a neuroscience perspective, overanalysis involves heightened activity in several regions of the brain responsible for planning, decision-making, and emotional processing. When you analyze something deeply, the brain activates networks that simulate possible outcomes and evaluate risks. This process is normally helpful because it allows humans to plan ahead and avoid mistakes. However, when this system becomes overactive, the brain continues searching for certainty, even when no new information is available. As a result, the mind becomes trapped in repetitive thought cycles. These cycles create mental fatigue, increase stress, and reduce the brain's ability to focus on present tasks. Understanding the neuroscience behind overanalysis helps explain why intelligent and thoughtful individuals are often more vulnerable to this pattern, and why learning to interrupt these cycles is essential for maintaining mental clarity and emotional balance. 2. The role of the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain most responsible for analytical thinking and decision-making. It helps you plan for the future, evaluate consequences, and control impulses. When you analyze a situation, this region becomes highly active as it processes information and weighs different possibilities. In normal conditions, the prefrontal cortex works together with other brain systems to reach decisions efficiently. However, during overanalysis, this area remains active for extended periods of time. Instead of moving toward a conclusion, the brain continues generating new possibilities and alternative outcomes. Each new possibility requires additional mental processing, which increases cognitive workload. Over time, this constant activity leads to mental fatigue and reduced clarity. When the prefrontal cortex becomes overworked, it may actually make decision-making harder instead of easier. The brain begins to struggle with prioritizing information and distinguishing important factors from irrelevant ones. This explains why people who overanalyze often feel stuck, unable to choose between options even when the differences are small. The brain is simply processing more possibilities than it can efficiently handle. 3. The amygdala and emotional amplification. While the prefrontal cortex handles logical analysis, another brain region known as the amygdala plays a major role in emotional reactions. The amygdala detects potential threats and activates emotional responses such as fear or anxiety. During overanalysis, the amygdala can become involved when the brain interprets uncertainty as a possible danger. When this happens, emotional signals begin to influence the thinking process. Instead of analyzing calmly, the brain starts imagining negative outcomes and worst-case scenarios. This emotional amplification increases mental stress and makes the situation feel more urgent or threatening than it actually is. The interaction between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala can create a feedback loop. The more the brain analyzes the situation, the more potential risks it identifies. These perceived risks trigger emotional responses, which then encourage even more analysis. This cycle keeps the brain locked in a state of constant evaluation. Understanding the role of the amygdala helps explain why overanalysis often feels emotionally exhausting, even when the original problem was relatively small. 4. The brain's default mode network. Another important system involved in overanalysis is the brain's default mode network, often abbreviated as the DMN. This network becomes active when the mind is not focused on external tasks. Instead of paying attention to the outside world, the brain begins to reflect on memories, imagine the future, or evaluate personal experiences. The DMN plays a crucial role in creativity and self-reflection. However, when it becomes overactive, it can also contribute to rumination and overanalysis. When you are alone with your thoughts, the default mode network may begin replaying past events, analyzing conversations, or imagining how situations could have been handled differently. This internal thinking process can easily become repetitive. Because the brain is not receiving new external input, it continues recycling the same information. The longer this continues, the more mental energy it consumes. This is why overanalysis often happens during quiet moments, such as before sleep or while resting. The brain simply has the space to begin analyzing without interruption. 5. Dopamine and the search for certainty. The brain uses chemical messengers called neurotransmitters to regulate thinking and behavior. One of the most important of these chemicals is dopamine. Dopamine is often associated with motivation and reward, but it also plays a role in problem solving. When the brain tries to solve a problem, dopamine helps maintain focus and encourages the search for answers. However, during overanalysis, the brain may continue seeking solutions even after reaching a reasonable conclusion. Because uncertainty remains, the brain keeps searching for additional information that might provide complete certainty. Unfortunately, many life decisions do not have perfect answers. When the brain cannot find certainty, it continues analyzing possibilities in an attempt to reduce uncertainty. This constant search keeps the thinking process active longer than necessary. Over time, this excessive activity drains mental energy and increases frustration. 6. Cognitive load and mental exhaustion. Overanalysis places a heavy burden on the brain's cognitive resources. Cognitive load refers to the amount of mental effort required to process information. Every time the brain evaluates a possibility, compares options, or recalls past experiences, it uses cognitive resources. When overanalysis occurs, the brain repeatedly processes similar information without reaching closure. This creates a growing cognitive load that eventually leads to mental exhaustion. As cognitive load increases, the brain becomes less efficient at managing new information. Tasks that normally require little effort begin to feel difficult because the brain's processing capacity is already occupied. This is why people who overanalyze often experience difficulty concentrating, remembering details, or making simple decisions. The brain is essentially overloaded with unresolved thoughts. 7. The stress response and overthinking. When the brain perceives a situation as uncertain or potentially threatening, it may activate the body's stress response. Stress hormones increase alertness and prepare the body to deal with challenges. While this response is helpful in dangerous situations, overanalysis can keep the stress response active longer than necessary. The brain continues analyzing the situation in an attempt to find a safe outcome. As stress hormones remain elevated, the body stays in a heightened state of alertness. This constant activation drains both mental and physical energy. If you liked this video and would like to see more like it, please give it the thumbs up. Leave a comment and click the button to subscribe.